Welcome to Mystery Sauce, where we delve into true crime, paranormal, and the unknown. Today we cover the story of a man who thought he was a 700-year-old vampire. He shot Daddy's grandmother with gold bullets and drank their blood. He believed he required the blood of his elders to survive because his brain was on fire. Now, Marshfield in Plymouth County, Massachusetts, is probably best known as the home of Daniel Webster, the U.S. Secretary of State from 1850 to 1852. The town doubles in population during the summer due to its inviolable coastal location. Now, on the 10th of April 1980, during a cold spring, a 700-year-old vampire visited the home of 74-year-old disabled pensioner Carmen Lopez and ended her life. The perpetrator was her grandson, who was 23 years old, James P. Riva, who would come to be known as the schizophrenic vampire or the Marshfield vampire killer. James had lived with wheelchair-bound Carmen for the past 9 months, since the summer of 1979. Now, just days before the murder, he moved out and shackled up with Henry Lopez, his granduncle. And on that day of the murder, it appeared to many that James was living a normal day like any other. Henry drove James to his father's home in Braintree, which is about 18 miles away, where James claimed he was going for a job interview. When Henry drove away, James borrowed his father's car and went back to Marshfield. There he drove to an auto supply store where he bumped into an old high school teacher. He asked the teacher about how to fix brake linings. It seemed the usual thing to ask but the teacher began to get bad vibes from him and made their excuse to leave. So at about 3 p.m., he parked on a road a couple of blocks away from Carmen's home and went in through the front door. He found her lying on the couch. She asked him to do some washing for her, but less than half an hour later, Carmen was dead. James had constantly argued with his grandmother about his long hair and lack of employment, going as far as to call him useless. And on that afternoon, James followed her instructions and began to sort out the washing. And halfway through, he left the chores and retrieved 4 gold-painted bullets and a gun from the cellar, which he had previously stored down there. Now, Carmen saw the gun and threw a glass at him. Angered by her hate, James shot her and then stabbed her to make sure she was dead. As she sat dying in her wheelchair, James dropped to his knees and began drinking the blood from the wounds. He sucked the blood out of the bullet holes because a vampire had told him to do so. You see, James had come to believe he was a 700-year-old vampire, as revealed to him by the voice of an unidentified vampire in his head. He learned that to remain youthful, he needed to drink the fresh blood of his elders, and his grandmother was the perfect victim, for they never really got along. So for many months, James desired human and animal blood to the point that he would sometimes roam the countryside attempting to catch animals to kill. He was also known to eat sporadically and choose shop-bought animal blood as food. He later admitted to killing a horse and drinking the blood from its neck. And after he drank much of Carmen's blood, he carried her into the bedroom and set her on fire. Before he left the house, he rolled the wheelchair into her bedroom to make it look like a freak accident. A painter working on a neighbor's house saw the flames and called emergency services right away. The fire services arrived and extinguished the flames, and they found Carmen's body in the bedroom. The police were called in, by which point James was picking up his father in Braintree and bringing him back to Marshfield. Now, as they drove back to his grandmother's house, he confessed that he had been inside the property early in the day, but had trouble remembering entirely what happened. He was arrested the moment he returned to the house. James had a well-documented history of mental illness and had been admitted to various psychiatric institutes from a young age. One psychiatrist had previously diagnosed him with paranoia, schizophrenia, a disorder which is associated with hallucinations and delusions. Now, while awaiting his trial, his estranged mother, Janet Jones, visited him on many occasions. He allegedly told her that his brain was on fire and his stomach hurt due to a lack of fresh blood. He also claimed the vampire talking to him in his head was becoming aggressive towards him. During the trial, there were further revelations. Of the life James lived, and what led him to becoming the Marshfield vampire. There were accusations his mother had severely abused him as a child. At first, she denied the claims, but wrote a letter to the court confessing she had sinned against him. Now, when James was a child, she would repeatedly dunk his head in a sink of water, threatening to drown him. She also beat him for not carrying out his chores, or for simply not being the boy she had wanted him from the beginning. A defense psychiatrist spoke of his conversations with James. Though he claimed he was a 700-year-old vampire, he believed he had come from a long line of vampires, and that his grandmother was working to suppress his vampirism. He said that she would prick him with an ice pick in order to draw blood away from his body before attempting to drink it. It was an apparent ritual of an elder vampire wanting to halt the growth of a younger one. Despite the mental disorders and many psychiatric evaluations claiming James to be extremely ill, he was found criminally responsible for the murder. The trial lasted only a few weeks, and James was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. Now, in the years that followed, James was admitted to a nearby psychiatric unit 4 times and was diagnosed again with schizophrenia and personality disorder. While in prison, he allegedly held out a job in the hopes of achieving parole. A few years ago, in 2009, at a second parole board hearing, his lawyers spoke of James' willingness to rejoin society. He had been on a mental health medication for nearly 3 decades, and by that point, and claimed to be sorry for his actions. However, the board refused to grant James his freedom. Members of the board felt he couldn't be trusted, showed limited or false remorse, and lacked insight into the cause of his violence. They concluded he would be unfit for re-entry into society. Their conclusion was bolstered by the revelation that he was found to be writing threatening letters to his own mother, in which he wrote of drinking her blood still. He also had attacked one of the prison guards with a shiv and beat him with a mop handle, accusing of sneaking into his cell to drain his spinal fluid. One board member proclaimed, God forbid if he got loose in society again, somebody would die. His most recent parole hearing was in 2019, which was only 5 years ago, and when he was only at the age of 62 years old. Again, he was denied and is due for another hearing in 2024 now, where he will be age 66 years old. The Marshfield vampire killer was years in the making, from a damaged childhood to a broken mind. Now, despite all the psychiatric help he has received, it appears he, or the 700-year-old vampire within him, will remain confined until his natural death. So, that will do it for today's short story. If you enjoyed this story and would love to hear more, then please hit the like and subscribe button, and even use the comment button to leave any suggestions. Thanks for joining me. See you on the next one.